Hello and welcome to a special edition of the Vote on 420 countdown. We've only got 2 days left and this particular video is directed to everyone that has voted, everyone that has followed, everyone that has subscribed, liked, retweeted, etc. I've said from the beginning that this campaign is for the people and directed and entirely decided upon by you. Therefore, what I want to do is show to you, the voters, how I have attempted to approach the rest of the UK and encourage them to vote and do more. I'll show you the different groups that we've approached and some of the difficulties we've had in approaching these groups and spreading the word about Vote On. So, 4 weeks ago, I set up the campaign and went live. In the interests of remaining neutral, not pro or con, initially the demographic that I approached are the most influential people in the UK. So we have the top political figures, including the Prime Minister and competing parties, the top 100 political editors and news reporters in the UK. In addition, I also targeted the top 250 influential celebrities on various social networks, both Facebook and Twitter. Essentially what I wanted to go after were the people of influence in this country, the people who represent and have access to hundreds of thousands of people throughout the UK who are otherwise relatively unreachable, the people who are socially integrated, influential to all parts of the UK and many different demographics through their different trades. That took about 2 days to approach them all and try to gain some feedback, and I think within about a day and a half, about 80% of them had Twitter muted me, which essentially means that any tweets I direct with their @ signature, not only do they not see it, but none of their followers do either. I was muted pretty much regimentally right across the board. And that's the first thing I realised. Obviously, nobody wants to be the first person, right? I mean, if you're the first person who gets on board with any form of conversation about drugs or drugs legislation, you're going to be the fall guy for the press. You're going to be the targeted person, you're going to be the person of influence who will have started it all, even though it's just making a stand or making a comment. It's too scary. We've frightened our most influential characters out of being able to change our society. And in addition, the reasons for asking this question now are based around austerity, something that everyday people experience all the time, and particularly in the celebrity sphere, the motivation to talk about austerity isn't necessarily a first-hand motivation for them because they're not experiencing it. That's not to say they wouldn't. That is to say they wouldn't. All of these people I approached, none of them stuck their neck out. But they have their livelihoods, their brand, their agreements, their contracts to adhere to, and all the rest of it. It's just a shame that the most central, influential figures in our society are not the ones who will look to breach taboos, even though they definitely have the power. So from there, I went to the student market, the disenfranchised, Generation X, Generation Vote, the people who have a huge number of opinions but are never asked for them, and the people that are not voting this year round. So I approached 250 of the top universities and 250 of the top student unions represented on social networks. I sent the Day 9 video to them. If you haven't seen it, do. It presents, I think, the most objective logic as to how I came to ask these questions. Initially, I received excellent feedback. People were saying, this looks good, we'll get back to you. Then, after about 3-4 hours, all of them, the universities and the student unions, all went 100% quiet. There wasn't a like, there wasn't a Facebook post, there wasn't a tweet, nothing. So I contacted some of the people I had before, and the universities initially said anything that gets put through our social media has to be signed off by a university representative, and you have to go through certain forms, certain media processes to get approval for that. I expected this with universities, but didn't expect it so much with the student unions. The student unions, on the other hand, pretty much went entirely quiet and said it isn't possible without sign-off from the university for us to spread your survey any further at all. So I agreed to go through their due processes. Many have fallen on deaf ears, many are still in process, of course, given the time frames. Many have just been rejected. From there, I wasn't expecting this amount of lockdown. I thought it would be easy to get in touch with students and make them aware of different campaigns and things appearing in the political landscape, but it's not. In addition, the NUS, the National Union for Students, who have got a huge campaign going, Generation Vote. You will have heard about them with their advertising campaign being removed from trade stations because it's too, I believe, provocative. And I've heard nothing back from them either. And I thought the NUS, with their massive campaign to get students involved, vote about what's important, I thought there would be a lot more response and enthusiasm, and to date I've had no replies, no contact, no acknowledgement whatsoever. So unbelievably, and in a very short period of time, not only have I lost the celebrities and people of influence that would be able to connect with large numbers of people immediately, Also, the entire student body has become very progressively shut down, limiting my ability to connect with people who are happy to talk about drugs legislation. At this point, I decided to then approach the pro-cannabis people to rile them up and get votes, at least on one side, to try and provoke a seesaw reaction. Of course, the con-cannabis people, the current situation suits them. If they believe in prohibition and continuing that, it is the status quo. So there's not necessarily much of a reason to be voluble about this issue. So I approached all the very wide-ranging groups, from people who organised the Hyde Park protest on the 20th of April, and the surrounding groups around that who campaigned for legalisation and taxation on various number of grounds, including the right, lack of harm, financial gain, and of course the medical-based campaigners. And I assumed that the pro-cannabis camp was very harmonious and completely organised and set on the same goal. But this was not the case at all. You have many different groups campaigning for many different particular reasons and have different attitudes and ways of approaching decriminalisation. But at the heart of it, a lot of them seem to feel that the other is damaging the cause in itself. You've got a massive negative stereotype, which is the main reason why the aforementioned groups have been disinterested in getting tied with drugs in any way, shape or form as well, particularly cannabis. And there's not a lot of communication there. Now, the interesting thing I did learn is that the people that wish for decriminalisation are not the type of people to be social network orientated. That is to say, that people that use cannabis don't seem to be the people that are socially driven on the internet. They don't use Twitter, they don't use Facebook, they're off doing other things. And at the same time, those pro people are very worried about, say, their employers finding out, or the police or council. And this has meant to spread the message through the pro-cannabis camp and then get the seesaw going has not happened. So at this point I then started with the anti-establishment groups, okay? The Socialist Party, the parties on the left, the trade unions for instance, the People's Assembly, all the anti-austerity groups, the anti-privatisation NHS groups, the organised, apparently objective, yes anti-establishment, but the collective groups that are campaigning for change and are not afraid to state what they believe in, which is a key theme from all the previous groups. And these guys are in a very delicate position. In essence, they are demanding, wanting, asking the general public to take them seriously, to consider the views that they have, to consider their plight, to support it, and do all that against the government policies that exist. So, are they likely to jump on a bandwagon to talk about drugs policy, or be the first one to jump on a bandwagon to talk about drugs policy? No. Any time made with cannabis and any group in a tenuous position will result in terrible press. They will be hounded, their entire cause and everything they've worked for will be reduced. So that, again, has removed them from wanting to be the first. The entire stigma of drugs and cannabis basically prevents people talking about it in all forums, and that includes Facebook. And it's a very valid point to avoid conversations on drugs and drugs legislation to protect your job and your interests. It makes complete sense to me. Within the last 5 years, Facebook's introduced boosting, which has essentially rendered organic Facebook-based videos going viral. Not impossible, but extremely difficult. And what it does, if you own a page, you can pay. For a nominal fee, you get £20, you get 10,000 impressions or something like that, and every photo, every video, every post, every comment, everything you do is all of it under is go, oh, we can reach 500 people for an extra £5, or we can put your ad here, we can put your ad in front of all these people. So they're making all these triggers amount of money, but what it means is that all content has to be approved by Facebook, which puts a massive control on it. So I uploaded my video, of course, and went through a ridiculous theatre of back and forths with their team, who claimed that it wasn't appropriate because it had more than 20% text, so I took out the text, no problem. It wasn't appropriate then after that because they had the Facebook logo, and took out the Facebook logo, no problems. And I said, is there anything else you need to know? Nothing, complete silent, re-uploaded it, applied again, and the reaction then was no. So I assessed their terms and conditions point by point, and that articulated actually that everything I was doing, limited company, the objective empirical nature, that it wasn't contravening any of their guidelines. And still they came back then and said, no, we don't have to give a reason, we reserve the right to know anything. And so the whole campaign, and not just that video, no content am I allowed to boost, which has obviously put a massive dampener on my ability to reach people through Facebook. So it has to be organic. For the first time in 5 years, it's going to have to be an actual organic push. So that, twinned with a huge number of groups obviously not wanting to associate through a very detrimental stereotype that has long been attached to cannabis and basically all drugs, because there is a social enjoyment to all of these entities. Current policymakers and the media have done extremely well to create an iron curtain of fear surrounding the topic of drugs. If you're famous, you risk absolute defamation, and if you're not famous, you risk unemployability. And those two are more than enough to dissuade people from being the first person. Which is why I started with the celebrities. Because if there was just one that normalised the whole concept of talking about drugs, once it's normalised, everyone can speak about it. It's the same with everything, it's the top down. But no one will. Not yet. So with 2 days left to the end of the vote, I wanted to show you, the followers, the voters, the subscribers, the likers, the retweeters, what I have been trying to do for you to get your vote to matter more and to go further. I will continue to try, and I've been silent over the weekend as I've been in Bristol and London trying the face-to-face approach by handing leaflets about, which has been great. It was really successful. But yet again, since seeing and speaking to these people in person, in the flesh, both pro and con, the social media occurrence has been relatively nil. And that comes back down to the fear, I can only assume. This video was the honest approach. And if you have any ideas in the next 2 days of groups I can approach or individuals, get in touch and tell me. We've only got 2 days left. I'll do another update when we know more. Subscribe on YouTube, like on Facebook, and retweet on Twitter. Vote On belongs to you. You decide. Go to our YouTube channel, Vote On 420 UK, and watch our time-lapse video, or go straight to the website and click on Nick Clegg for a tour. Thanks.